Hello there, and welcome to Weird Music on the Glumberger channel. The strange music show that celebrates the vast range of music, the plethora of things that are out there just ready for us to listen to and discover, right? So yep, we have made it. The year of 2025. We finally managed to make it through another year, right? For me, this year seems to have just gone past in a blur. Like, so much has happened to me this year, including going on holiday, finishing the second Burden Limbs album, and the big one, getting married. I got married this year. I can't believe it, basically. So, yes, if you're watching this, then you're of course watching my rundown of my top 50 favourite albums of the year. Since the start of the year, I've been trying to make sure to keep on top of, listening to as much new music as I possibly could. Whenever I would listen to something new this year and I liked it, made a note of it, so I wouldn't have to try and remember all the different things I loved over the year. The list ended up being huge, as it was, hence why we're now reviewing 50 albums instead of 30. These are all basically my favourite things that cropped over the year. So if something is not in this list, it's probably because I didn't listen to it, truth be told. There's a lot of things that I shouldn't have listened to that are on this list, a lot of things that has no business being on the end of the year list, but at the same time, I couldn't care less. I like these albums, and the point of these videos is to say what I enjoyed over the year. So yeah, without further ado, I present the 50 best albums of the year 2025. Enjoy. Number 50. Casiu, Jean Casten. So to start off this list, we have a short 14-minute track from one Jean Casten, the oddly titled Casiu, which was released on Fault. So this track, sourced from a performance/listening party at a friend's house, utilises Casio M10, organ recordings from a nearby church, and an Arturia microbrute to offer up very heavy and dense drone experience that pours these thick layers upon you. Listening to this little composition is like submerging yourself in these incredibly thick layers of honey, feeling the granular synthesis brushing up against your skin as the music forces you further down. Across the 14 minutes, it's actually a lovely interplay between all of the different sources, with the church organ providing a lot of the high end, whilst the synthesizers seem to offer up a lot of low end that really submerges you within the entire thing so delightfully. A truly wonderful release that you can just easily get lost within whenever you play it. Number 49. Immeasurable and Painless, LSZ. So if you follow the work of one Brian Granger, or anyone or all of his many different projects, then you'll know how prolific the dude is at creating so many albums across the course of a year. One of my absolute top favourites was the one release that was on Valentine's Day on Riff Merchant Records, Immeasurable and Painless, released under the LSZ moniker. So this 54-minute composition offers up a pure sonic drone bath, essentially. These gorgeous layers of sound, this uplifting spiritual drone that weighs down so delightfully as you're just sonically overloaded by this pure this existential bliss, essentially. It's without a doubt one of the most gorgeous releases we've ever had from Granger in his vast discography. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful albums under his many projects, especially under the Milieu moniker. But this, I think, is just something that has shot up to be an absolute favourite of mine, and something I just adore to listen to. So yeah, if you adore just having a long composition that you can just soak yourself in for 50 minutes as you drift off, then look no further than here. Number 48. Vildexa, Varaki. So the Dungeon Synth album Vildexa by Varaki, this is one of many different monikers for one Tris Mamone. So on Vildexa, we're given such a deep dive into the wonderful imagination that Mamone has, who conjured up such an incredibly rich story to go alongside their Dungeon synth album. So utilising synth plugins and samples, Mamone offers up one of these lovely medieval, just a very lovely medieval folksy vibe essentially, across all of the different tracks, expressing this fascinating story of Vildexa, a witch cast out of society by the decree of the malevolent King Malvagia. Reading the entire story that accompanies the Bandcamp page, it kind of just captures this lovely Dungeons and Dragons aesthetic of these quaint little fantasy stories, resulting in an incredibly charming album release. I've personally delighted in listening to this one whilst playing, one of my favourite games of the year, which was Drop Duchy, which is essentially the medieval Tetris game. This is a lovely little Dungeon synth album to just sink your teeth into for a while. Truly wonderful. Number 47, Fragile Peaks, Landscap. So Home Normal has always been a source of some of the most gorgeous ambient music you can come across. 2025 featured a whole host of phenomenal albums, with one of my favourites being the latest album by Landscap, which is a collaborative effort from label owner Ian Horgood and Warren Forrest Kroll. So this 35-minute release just offers up pure ambient vibes essentially, a very gentle and serene landscape of these slow-growing drones simmering and pulsating as they hover within the very air itself. It's all sourced from looped mellotrones, synth tones, and multiple guitar drones that just weave in and out of the composition as it all occurs. It is amongst one of my favourite ambient releases of this year, though there's been a lot of ambient releases that I enjoyed this year. But this one just feels so peaceful and calm as it just effortlessly drifts past. Number 46, The Same Old Wasted Wonderful World, Motion City soundtrack. So 2025, the year we got a Motion City soundtrack comeback album. So it has been 10 years since the release of Panic Stations, which at the time saw the pop-punk band continuing their wonderful existential style of infectious tunes. A decade later, though, it seems like the band have lost none of that charm and wit that comes with their music, with The Same Old Wasted Wonderful World just being an album that brings the band right back to their roots, of just fun, emo pop music, essentially. This is just such a fun album to just rock out and dance to. And hearing this reminded me so much of just being a young teenager again, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing at all. There is some joyous pop bangers here, I have to say, from the collaborative track Particle Physics, which features the one and only Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy, to some nice existential tracks which are ranking as some of my favourite Motion City soundtrack tunes, like Your Days Are Numbered, which has a wonderful animated music video to go along with it. So not the absolute best album of the year, but something I really enjoyed a lot, even though my tastes have changed so much since I was a teenager, but seems like there's a part of me that just can't stop loving Motion City soundtrack. Number 45, I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away, Hayden Pedigo. So it was because of a collaborative album with the one and only Chapal that I came across the music of Hayden Pedigo. So Pedigo's music comes under a genre that I never came across before until this year, American Primitive, which sounds to me like gentle acoustic Americana music. Listening to Pedigo's music, I'm reminded so much of the kind of thing that Hank Hill from King of the Hill would play on his guitar Betsy, which makes sense considering Pedigo's origin is from Texas. But yes, I'll Be Waving As You Drive Away. What a delightfully gorgeous album this is, though. You've just got Pedigo creating the absolute amazing melodies drawn from his instrument, these finger-picked acoustics that run all over the guitar with such expert precision. absolutely beautiful music that just stuns you with its complexities, whilst also delighting you with their incredibly relaxing and gorgeous vibes. And alongside with it, you do get some lovely, gorgeous instrumentals, backed up by all the other collaborators and instruments that back up that guitar. Though you do have Pedigo right at the forefront, just dominating the scene with that wonderful style of guitar. Like, what a truly gorgeous and beautiful record this is. Number 44, Sasquatch Landslide, The Dwarfs of East Agouza. So Constellation Records ended up releasing the latest album by the Dwarfs of East Agouza, which is an experimental trio of fried Arabic psychedelic rock consisting of Sam Shalabi, Maurice Luca, and Alan Bishop. So the Dwarfs of East Agouza have been delighting audiences with their incredible improvisational music, just frying the brain with their strung together guitar lines, weird krautrock structures, and free jazz forms. Listening to Sasquatch Landslide, it feels like being lost in this very weird dream world, influenced by the skylines of Cairo perhaps, lost in the thrustle and bustle of the hot busy streets as music communicates itself through the airwaves. It is without a doubt one of the most bewildering albums I think I've come across this year, but it joins so nicely into the Dwarves' wonderful eclectic discography, whilst also introducing the trio to the roster of Constellation Records finally. Number 43, Now We Are Branches and Leaves, Ojeram and Peter Knight. So next here we have Now We Are Branches and Leaves by Ojeram and Peter Knight, released on 12K. So this collaborative album offers us a single hour-long composition, incorporating this incredibly gentle, meandering piano, one that is completely untethered as it navigates across the length of this very long composition, backed up by these incredibly wonderful airy drones sourced from some kind of brass instrument for the most part. Alongside all of these electronic drones as well, it combines effortlessly to create this very serene landscape that feels like the wind blowing right through you through these very cold days, kicking up the leaves and dust as it all sweeps past. It is truly a wonderful composition featuring some very nice experimentation here and there, even incorporating some phaser effects it feels that work so nicely within that sort of icy cold landscape when they do occur. A gorgeous release that you can just easily get lost within considering that hour-long runtime. Number 42, For Laura, Jake Kazvetes. So from Dragon's Eye Recordings, we have the debut album from one Jake Kazvetes, For Laura, an album which draws inspiration from The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer by Jennifer Lynch. So weaving together field recordings with tonal layers generated from synths, keyboards, and essentially whatever else Kazvetes has to hand, what we end up here is a somewhat shorter album that guides itself across rather short tracks, in offering essentially small sonic snapshots that create these vignettes of imaginary places drawn from your own memories of real ones. But across the course of the album though, there's a very lovely sentiment to the whole thing, that creates this very gentle, serene environment that leans very heavily into those field recordings for the most part to build up the characters of those compositions, whilst the instrumentals create the sort of abstract aesthetic that you get lost within. A truly wonderful debut and that adds so nicely into Dragon's Eye Recordings' wonderful discography of music. Number 41, In My Grave, Silence, Dolben. So this is definitely a bit of a weird one, I have to say, but in a truly delightful way. In My Grave, Silence, the latest effort from American band Dolben, which offers up more of their distinct style of acoustic doom music. Across the 7 tracks here, we have a very interesting style of folk-esque music, bordering almost on progressive rock music, or at least those bits where they bust out the acoustic guitars, like you sort of get in some Porcupine Trees songs, for example. But what makes Dolphin very interesting is throughout it all, there's actually this very doomy aesthetic, though. Like all of the codes and conventions of doom music, except the parts where you plug in the guitar into the amplifiers and just blast out distortion and fuzz. It comes across, though, as a beautiful melancholic album that captures this somber atmosphere of broken existentialism, beautifully packaged with this original art capturing this kind of old religious imagery, essentially. An unusual yet rather rewarding album that I think kind of answers the question of what doom might have sounded like in the medieval times. Number 40. In the Earth Again, Chapal and Hayden Pedigo. So a bit of a weird one from Chapal, but then again a lot of their stuff is pretty weird, I would argue. So following on from last year's Cool World, we've got another chapter in the band's ever-growing discography with the collaborative album In the Earth Again with Hayden Pedigo. So as mentioned when we just discussed Hayden Pedigo, I actually had no idea who the dude was until coming across this album. And In the Earth Again feels like a very fascinating collaboration though, especially after hearing the music of Chapal and now being familiar with the music of Hayden Pedigo. It's very interesting both fused together here. But In the Earth Again offers both artists so much space to sort of guide and influence the music in their own ways, creating something that doesn't fall at all comfortably into either artist's discography. Like, you kind of do have that gentle serenity of expert guitar playing from Pedigo and the ferocious chunk and grind from Chapal, but there's even some pushing of the envelope from the band, allowing room for a lot more sincerity and, would I dare say, tenderness at times. It's a peculiar album that doesn't rank as one of my top favourites from Chapal, but it is nonetheless a fascinating addition to their ever-growing discography and just another indication of why they're such an amazing band to keep an eye on. Number 39, Beneath the Hanging Sky, Yorkshire Modular Society and Peter Digby Lee. So one of my favourites from Dragon Eye recordings, the collaborative effort between Yorkshire Modular Society and Peter Digby Lee. So Beneath the Hanging Sky, this 4-track album has an incredibly generous helping of electro-acoustic ambient vibes. The story goes that, a chance meeting at the resonant drone bath in Todmorden, caused the two artists to cross paths with each other. And after some time, Peter Digby Lee ended up sending an archive of sound samples that he had recorded and collected over the many different years to Yorkshire Modular Society or Dominic Schofield, which gave him the chance to loop, stretch and shape the sounds into the very album that we have here today. And across the 4 different tracks, you have these very different vibes across the different narratives, essentially. But they all offer such a tapestry of sounds, all combined together to create these very serene, contemplative vibes, punctuated so much by flute performances performed by Peter Digby Lee, sourced from those very archives. It is a wonderfully delightful album that feels so serene and meditative, it's offering so much space to just calm oneself down and centre oneself. Number 38, Rusted in the Salted Air, Will Bolton. So another one from Home Normal here. This is easily one of my favourite records for ambient music, I have to say. But yes, this year we also got the latest effort from Will Bolton, the gorgeous Rusted in the Salt Air. So utilising environment sounds, radio waves and found objects recorded and collected on the Suffolk coast, alongside Bolton's arsenal of synthesizers, we have just a truly gentle, serene album experience that feels like you're just gently washing up on the coast of some beach in England, feeling the warm breeze of summer glide over you as the smell of sand and salt just fills up your lungs. There's a lot of fascinating interplay between the gorgeous melodic elements and then this kind of darker undertone that seems to permeate throughout a lot of the recordings, creating this very unusual sense of tension that is completely relieved in the more gorgeous, beautiful tracks. Without a doubt, one of the most gorgeous ambient experiences I feel that just easily soothes your soul when you hear it. Number 37. Never Die, Matt Jensik and Midwife. So, another collaboration here. We've had a lot of very interesting collaborations, lots of phenomenal joining of forces it seems, creating some of the most fascinating music as a result. Still a lot more to come on this list, by the way. Anyway, what we have here though is a very interesting one from Matt Jensik and Midwife, with their first album together, Never Die. So it seems after making a lot of ambient drone albums, Jensik wanted to push himself creatively to write vocal-heavy songs, and thus turned to none other than Midwife, whose gentle soaring vocals combine so brilliantly with his own aesthetics to wonder effect. Never Die is an album that hangs so heavily, just those incredibly slow tempos, a cloud of fuzz and distortion, and just simmering away over those reverb-drenched vocals from both Jensik and Johnston. It is a gorgeous record that confronts us with our own mortality, the eventual limit that is our own existence, all clouded with such a gorgeous palette of peculiar airy instrumentals. Truly gorgeous. Number 36. To Live, Rosales. So, another one from Home Normal. This is the latest collaborative effort from Ian Holgard and Brad Deschamps, the latter who's more commonly known as Anthane. So, Rosales is the moniker for this duo, who over the years have pushed out a number of gorgeous ambient releases. To Live, their 2025 effort, is just a calm glide of guitar-led drones, carrying so much emotion as they just soar through the very air itself, it feels. Rosales has always been one of my favourite groups to come from Ian Holgard's ambient community, and To Live is easily one of the most gorgeous albums within their incredible discography, I have to say. Much like Landscap, which we discussed earlier, this one weaves together guitar drones with synth and field recordings, and a fair bit of tape manipulation as well, which really helps to create these very gentle lo-fi beds of ambient drone. Truly gorgeous, and another one of my favourites coming from Home Normal, I have to say. Number 35, Waiting Room, Katherine Mur. So, an interesting album that was released on the Flenser this year, the debut album from Katherine Mur, The Waiting Room. So this album, apparently falling under the genre of ambient pop, it offers up an unusually skewed album experience, I have to say, of fractured guitar lines and wheezing pianos. Across that, you end up having these very ethereal vocals, accompanying these sparse instrumentals that are then backed up by the most peculiar palette of ambient textures, hauntingly occurring in the background with a rather icy cold aesthetic. Whilst the vocals kind of recall similar vibes to like a grouper and or Midwife, I actually find the instrumentals to be oddly reminiscent of Jandek at times. Not just so much in how he plays it, but how in the way he records his music you get so many unusual little sounds occurring in the background of everything. As well though, of kind of taking that incredibly fractured approach to songwriting perhaps, delighting in the oddities of sounds at times. Though I have to say, Katherine Mur a lot more accessible here. This is, without a doubt, a fascinating debut that combines wonderful elements of lo-fi aesthetics with expert desk manipulation to create a wonderful album experience. Number 34, On Imploding Views, Rhoda. So Rhoda, the collaborative effort from Ross Scott Bukeluk and Daniel Vujanik, this year saw the release of 2 interlinked Rhoda albums, On Imploding Views and On Exploding Views, with the former being my favourite of the two, I have to say. This peculiar enigmatic release offers more of that very unusual sound design, but this time it feels like it ventures so much more into territories of ambient drone for the most part, blowing powerfully like the wind with a lovely sense of minimalism at times. So much of On Imploding Views seems to just drone away incessantly, carrying us on this very strange, bewildering journey into unknown cold landscapes. It's truly wonderful seeing the evolution of this project really blossoming forth with these 2 releases, I have to say. Just a wonderful sense of collaboration between these 2 artists, creating fascinating experimental music. Truly brilliant. Number 33, Reverie, Rebecca Foon and Alita Foon Dankos. So Reverie is the phenomenal collaborative album from Rebecca Foon and her sister Alita Foon Dankos, which offers up an incredibly emotional and impactful instrumental experience of gorgeous strings, with Rebecca on the cello and Alita on the violin, and as well as that, heartbreaking pianos played by both of them, resulting in such a somber, melancholy experience. These strings seem to just twirl around and around across the whole thing, just as they just carry the melodies along, with the pianos anchoring it all with these rather sparse but very incredibly heavy and impactful emotional notes. I feel like with a lot of the album there's this very grandiose sentiment to it all, like the sweeping majesty of a film's soundtrack, only for a film that was never made, that's even mentioned in the liner notes. It's without a doubt one of the finest albums to come from Constellation Records, just this incredibly beautiful and impactful music. Number 32, Unrund, Jogging House. So, another Jogging House. He seems like he's always making the list, but damn, the dude just makes some of the most gorgeous, effortless ambient music I've ever had the joy of discovering. So Unrund offers a very lengthy album experience, with 8 13-minute tracks, which was released on 2 cassettes. So utilising Modular system, kalimba, electric guitar, ferros, coquantes, mood, Varaki, and various types of paper, as mentioned in Bandcamp, we just have another effortless glide into delightful ambient music here. Something to just settle your soul. Just incredibly calm ambient drones that drift elements in and out of the mix so easily, providing you with these very calm, warm waves that wash all over you. This one I personally refer to as the one with the chickens on it, which seems to be the best way for me to refer to Jogging House albums, like I think last year was the one with a car in a field. But jokes aside, it's such a charming addition to Jogging House's incredible discography of music, truly wonderful. Number 31, Kaligo, Sioashi Amini. So one of Iran's best experimental musicians, Sioashi Amini, whose name I'm not sure how to say exactly, I do apologise. So they released an incredible album on Room 40 this year, the latest effort of Kaligo. So utilising 2 of the earliest solo piano performances in Iran's history, Kaligo unfurls this incredible experimental experience that just blurs the lines of the past and the present with such fascinating clarity as it all occurs. The whole album just unfolds so precariously, taking unsettling, haunting ambient drones and then backing them with these faint murmurings of melodies sourced from that very piano. It creates an album that to me feels like you're constantly looking over your shoulder, trying to hold onto the past as everything is threatening to take it all away from you in this present day, as the world just seems to fall into disarray and chaos. A truly phenomenal album and one of the many best from Room 40 of this year. 30. New World, Lonely Ride, Marco Gugoni and Pan American. So one of my favourite releases from Cranky this year, another collaborative album, this time from Michael Gregoni and Pan American. New World, Lonely Ride. So this album offers up some of the most peaceful music I think I've ever come across this year. Just gorgeous, gentle acoustic instruments finger-picked with such sombre, delightful melodies, interplaying in amongst each other as light ambient waves surround the scene, creating this wonderful environment of pure serenity. For me, this feels like a match made in heaven, what with Gregoni's expertise at the pedal and lap steel guitar, and Pan American exploring much more melodic guitar lines in his more recent albums for Cranky, yet still resulting in something that's kind of ambient in a few respects. Just truly gorgeous what they've both come up with, and without doubt one of the most loveliest albums of this year, I have to say. Number 29, the 22nd of the 2nd month, 2025. Misa Lamberg. So without a doubt, one of my favourite releases from Fault Records of this year. We had a lot of fascinating albums from the label this year, with my favourite being the 22nd of the 2nd month 2025 by Misa Lamberg. So this singular composition offers up 20 minutes of incredibly strange and unusual sound design, opening up with very gentle field recordings that place you sort of into the general public, a strange warble of stretched notes to distort the scene before you're placed into sort of monochromatic lull as you become further untethered in time itself. It is a wonderful composition that really pushes Lamberg's world of field recordings into the realms of the abstract with use of sampling hardware. I feel like this is a perfect place to begin with Lamberg's music, with their first official length album being released on Dragon's Eye Recordings of next year, which is something I've already heard and is definitely one to keep an eye out for, by the way. Number 28, Pervert, Ethel Kane. So, I'll be honest, I'd actually never really came across the music of Ethel Kane prior to this year. Huge artist with a huge fan base, but I have to be honest, her music doesn't do all that much for me. And I don't know why, because there's nothing wrong with it, but I just don't feel any much of an inclination towards it. However, I did really like Perverts when I first heard it. So from my rudimentary understanding, this is one of the most least Ethel Kane things she's ever made, a near 90-minute experimental slow-cold dark drone ambient project that just centered mostly around the themes of pervasion in its many forms. It is an incredibly bizarre and uncomfortable album that just relishes in these amazing textures that one gets from experimentation with sounds, including the human voice and just drone music essentially, resulting in something that really digs under your skin as it all occurs. Incredibly creepy, but a phenomenal experience that really recalls a lot of the same kind of vibes you get from listening to soundtracks for the blind, I have to say. Number 27, Continuity, Jan Novak. So another one from Jan Novak, we have Continuity, a 3-track album released on Room 40 that captures this incredible awareness and perhaps worry over the paradoxical nature of both truth and transparency in this current climate. So utilising 28 loops of field recordings and synthesizers, Novak weaves together an album experience that captures the deceptive nature of modern technology, of existence in an information world where essentially we are being fed social media through a tube as an outlet for free expression, which essentially functions as a way to actually keep an eye on each and every one of us. As a result, we actually have an album that feels very melancholy and very moody, almost similar to Lifeblood of Life and Rapture in how it captures this very depressing awareness of the current state of the world. Long drones occupy so much of the scene, accompanied by the briefest and sparsest of motif, be it the faint voices of people from public spaces or the faint clicking of keyboards like those surveying you from behind their computers. An incredibly melancholy experience that drags your emotions into this worrying state of self-awareness across the rather lengthy tracks. Number 26, Prairie Smoke, Uam. Not sure how to say this one. Uam, who knows? But yeah, one for the black metal fans. So there's a bunch on this list. Considering the genre is not something I'd ever get into a decade or so ago, it's interesting how much has made it onto this list. But yeah, we'll get to those when we do. Anyway, Montana-based Uam offers their latest album experience of Prairie Smoke, taking their phenomenal atmospheric black metal aesthetic and applying it to the great open landscape of the American outdoors. So from its opener, you're just greeted with incredibly intense blast beats that threaten to tear you apart for nearly 10 minutes, before indulging in these wonderful levels of noise and distortion for the guitar and the guitars, before it just navigates all the different tracks before culminating in the phenomenal closer of Prairie Smoke, featuring some phenomenal vocal howls alongside an intense deluge of fuzzy guitars. It is a phenomenal record that is one of my many favourites from both the black metal scene and from Fihad Productions, who handled the physical release for this album, as well as a bunch of others we've mentioned in this list already, actually. Number 25, Eventual, Richard Chartier. So released in the tail end of this year, we have another album of extreme minimalism from Richard Chartier with the album Eventual. So released on 901 editions, this album offers up classic Chartier experience of incredibly quiet, tense, murmuring electronics, teetering on the very edge of audibility as it unfolds across the lengthy compositions. What I adore about this one is how Eventual is just so ultra minimal with how the whole thing plays out. Like, listening to it, your perception of what is there and what isn't just gets played around with in such oddly delightful ways, with a lot of high frequencies throwing you off a bit, and these intense low-end wubs just occurring constantly. Like, it gets to such odd levels where it feels like absolutely nothing is happening at all. But then you become aware of the fact that there is sound there that Chartier has produced. It's another testament to Chartier's phenomenal presence in the lowercase genre, with Eventual being just this wonderful album from him that gets under your skin with these incredibly tense aesthetics, but easily one of my favourite things I think I've heard from him. Number 24, With Trampled by Turtles, Alan Sparhawk. So following on from Sparhawk's debut solo album of sorts, White Roses My God, which was a fascinating yet divisive album to come from Sparhawk, we now have the collaborative album Alan Sparhawk with Trampled by Turtles, which is arguably much more likely to satisfy fans of Sparhawk and his music who were so off-put by White Roses. This album feels very much connected to that same sense of spirit that White Roses so experimentally tried to express though, using music to understand life and existence. On this album, what was incredibly electronic experimental seems now to lean much more towards elements of bluegrass and folk, thanks to the contributions of Trampled by Turtles, with Alan Sparhawk singing with his natural voice across the majority of this record. It's kind of a typical melancholy beauty that runs through Lowe's music, present on this very recording. Just the natural way that Sparhawk just taps into emotion so easily when he sings. But as melancholy as it all feels, there's actually a real sense of community and friendship evident on this very album, of everyone coming together to create one of the most comforting things that you can create during times of difficulty, which is music. Something very lovely and sweet about that very sentiment, and a truly brilliant album as a result. Number 23, Wave Resource, Wizardry AV. So, not sure how to say this artist's name, I do apologise. But yes, this is a bit of a weird one, but a very neat one from Line Records that ended up being one of my most listened to things of the year. mostly in part because of its incredibly vaporous, dreamy vibes. Wave Resource, the third album from Wizardry AV, following on from their albums West Coast Systems Volume 1 and 2. So this album is very peculiar in that it seems to rely entirely on a small 3-second audio sample sourced from a Casio HT700 synthesizer. The album plays off so weirdly into itself, it feels, producing this very notable audio loop before morphing and shifting it to these incredibly ethereal waves of ambient sounds that linger so beautifully upon these sustained tones the more the whole thing plays out. With it being so dominated by that loop, it's a very hypnotic album, one that easily causes one to just spin around and around down the plug hole, becoming completely lost and untethered in time as the loops just work their magic, before it all culminates into a 34-minute track at the end that blends each and every track into one cohesive experience. Truly amazing experimental music here. Number 22. Savage Modern Structures, Ian Horwood. So, alongside many collaborations from Ian Horwood, we also had one of Ian Horwood's most powerful solo albums within his vast discography, Savage Modern Structures. So following what was apparently an incredibly turbulent time in Horwood's life, we now see Horwood returning to creating wonderful music under his own name as a way of processing and healing oneself, and finding understanding in the unexplainable. We've had a string of many different releases, some collaborative, some solo, and it seems to have culminated with the release of this very album, Savage Modern Structures, utilising guitar and mellotron orchestration. The whole album just unfolds so slowly and beautifully, creating these gorgeous beds of ambience for you to just wrap yourself around with. It's a truly beautiful, heart-tugging album that carries with this incredibly heavy existential melancholy, but it's one that actually feels a little bit more hopeful and confident, of looking towards the future with brighter eyes following turbulent times. A truly gorgeous album that ranks as one of the best releases from Home Normal's incredibly vast discography of music. Number 21. Spiritual Anguish, Eudemon. So another black metal release. It's weird because, like I said, I was never one to dabble much for black metal, but since getting into the likes of Agriculture and other bands, I'm finding I'm enjoying these genres so much more than I ever have done, and 2025 has been one of the most wonderful years of discovering music within the genre. So Spiritual Anguish by Eudemon is without one of the many best that we got of this year. An emotional roller coaster across its six tracks, utilising wonderful levels of distortion and fuzz to create these sonic walls of dissonance, pushed by these ferocious blast beats. It is an overwhelming cacophony when you're in the maelstrom of noise, broken up by these wonderful instrumental passages highlighting the many different genre influences from the band members. It comes across so brilliantly though, with it being a wonderful thought-provoking album of harrowing existentialism. Truly want to check out if you enjoy your black metal music. Number 20. Dreams of Being Dust. The world is a beautiful place and I am no longer afraid to die. So one of my favourite bands, I have to say. The world is a beautiful place and I am no longer afraid to die. So it was with the band's previous release of Illusory Waltz that we kind of saw the band enter realms of progressive rock, producing a very peculiar and rather long album, that was a challenging release that expanded beautifully upon the world building that the band makes with all of their albums essentially. On our latest album, Dreams of Being Dust, though, everything is thrown back to more of those fervent and chaotic early years, featuring a lot more anguish and screaming than as everything seems to have gotten too much and there's nothing left to celebrate anymore. It's all been ruined and everything sucks now. It is an incredibly powerful statement from the band and on this album that feels very short and direct, immediately hammering home these conscientious thoughts of where the world is headed to in this current day and age. A rather intimidating release that is deservedly furious, but it epitomizes the band's constant endurance through these turbulent times. Number 19. Monochromes Volume 3, 2M. So, we have mentioned the Monochrome series by 2M on the channel before. We've done a deep dive into Monochromes Volume 1, and Volume 2 did end up making the list for the best of 2023, I have to say. This year, we're given the final entry to the series, Volume 3, which turns the Monochromes project into a triptych of 3 albums. Once again, it just feels like being pulled into this beautiful, billowing world of huge, enveloping soundscape that completely fill you up with this gorgeous sense of peace and calm. There's just something so ethereal and somber about the music, carrying along with these rather weighty, heavy emotions that tug in your heart as it all occurs. It's truly wonderful having this final third part to the collection of albums that finishes everything up on such a beautiful, wonderful note, bookending it all with those same levels of ethereal dreaminess. Truly wonderful. Number 18. Lonely People with Power, Death Heaven. So yep, we got a new Death Heaven album this year. So I'll admit here, I haven't actually listened to all that much of Death Heaven. The only album I really checked out properly was Sunbather many years ago. And I actually missed the boat on many of their releases. Which from my research, actually saw the band evolve and change their black metal sound across their discography. That being said, I still went to listen to Lonely People with Power, which really surprised me, I have to say. Like, this sees the band really indulging in the black metal style, offering up incredible blast beats and that dissonant, discordant distortion alongside such strange screaming. It's weird, but there is this phenomenal impact that comes from listening to the band's music, which is just something that warrants being played as loud as possible despite risking damage to your hearing, so I guess play it as a sensible volume instead. But yep, the more I listened to it, the more I ended up really liking this one, and the more I realised I should actually be checking out the whole band's discography. We'll get to it at some point though. Definitely a fantastic album though, and one of the many best we got from the black metal genre, I have to say. Number 17. Death Hilarious. Pigs, 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 pigs. So the latest album from Pigs, 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 Death Hilarious, certainly surprised me when I heard it. I have always enjoyed the music of Pigs Times 7, with a peculiar favourite of mine actually being their debut album of Feed the Rats. Pigs Times 7 have such an amazingly loud and intense sound when it comes to their branch of heavy psychedelic music, and Death Hilarious certainly managed to scratch that itch of indulgent fuzz and distortion. One of the strongest albums within the band's impressive discography, this album sees the band continuing their very wiry sense of humour across these very intense and heavy tracks. Still dealing with that self-deprecation that comes a lot on Matt Batty's lyrics, but with purely indulgent heavy riffs and even a wonderful collaboration with hip-hop's LP, this is a particular highlight within the band's ever-growing discography. Number 16. Blight, The Antlers.
Off the side of the road, branches trimmed and grasses.
So the Antlers' latest experience of Blight is one that certainly continues the band's foray into capturing incredibly impactful emotional experiences. Though this time, this one feels much more concerned with the state of the world rather than with these personal human stories. Blight comes across as a beautifully somber and delicate album, featuring some of Silverman's most direct lyrics to date. Whereas previous lyrics from Silverman dealt with abstract metaphors, Blight takes on a much more direct approach, offering ruminations on accidental animal cruelty, the environment, and the kind of passive nature of destructive human behaviour that we all, whether aware of it or not, deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's an incredibly impactful and emotional album experience whose message really resonates with each and every listen, all embedded in these gorgeously beautiful pastoral instrumentals. Truly one of the best to have come from Antlers, I have to say. Number 15, A Little Death, Claire Rousay. So another delightful album from Claire Rousay this year. Released on Halloween, funnily enough, A Little Death is another experimental album that delves into ambient sound art and collages, much like Everything Perfect Was Already Here, which is an album we've covered on the show. Featuring her trademark experimental style of combining many disparate sources of sound, from instruments performed by friends to field recordings and even her own musical contributions, Rousay creates another sonic snapshot that is the experience of being Claire Rousay in this current day and age. It's so lovely how, her music just seems like these sonic diaries of her life, but they're so gorgeous to listen to, I have to say. And on this one, there's so many beautiful moments of the music that feature a lot of very unusual sound textures here and there, resulting in an experience that feels so whimsical, wistful, and just beautifully melancholy. I just can't get over how gorgeous Rousay's music is, and how she's able to just weave together such amazing existential experiences that have these wonderful moments of humour, capturing the essence of the human experience that is simply existing. Easily one of my favourite albums to come from Rousay, and definitely one for those who adore her more experimental sound collages. Number 14, It's Closeness, It's Easy, Planning for Burial. So we got the latest Planning for Burial album this year. It's Closest, It's Easy, released on the Flenser. This follows on from the phenomenal album experience that was Below the House, an album which I actually discovered earlier this year, funnily enough, which I did a very big review on, perhaps too big. But yeah, it was a good time to get into Planning for Burial because this year we got the follow-up of It's Closest, It's Easy, released some 8 years after Below the House. So this album sees Wozlock once again offering up that same smorgasbord style of doomy shoegaze aesthetics, of loud, miserable anguish in the form of existential music, all performed by himself. You once again just get absolutely everything when it comes to Planning for Burial, from black metal to ambient to gloom and dirge and anything else you can find in between, resulting in a ferocious and emotionally impactful album experience. Truly phenomenal and one of my many favourites. Number 13, Private Music, Deftones. So yep, I'll admit it, I really like the new Deftones album. So Deftones released their 10th studio album this year, another dive into that wonderful alternative metal style that they are so well known for. It's weird because I actually didn't think I was going to enjoy Private Music all that much, or would enjoy it as much as I have done. Like previous albums like Ohms and Gorge are grand, but they are far cry away from the brilliance of albums like Koyo no Kan and Saturday Night Wrist. But Private Music seems to just excel the more it went on when I first heard it, and is quickly becoming one of my favourite Deftones albums, or amongst my many favourites. Like, I don't know why exactly, but in particular the song Cut Hands is something I really enjoy listening to a lot, just those incredible riffs and dirges and the noise that their instruments make. Like, it is just so phenomenal to listen to. The wonderful intensity of those distorted guitars, the riffs, the shoegazy vocals, like, oh my god, it is just brilliant. But the whole album as well is just a wonderful navigation, with it ending on a really weird song to come from Deftones, but a nice indication of actually the range that their music offers. Definitely one of their best that we've, in their already impressive discography, I have to say. Number 12, Aurora Terminalis, William Basinski and Richard Charter. So to kick off the year, we were actually given the latest collaboration from William Basinski and Richard Chartier, Aurora Terminalis, which is one of the most challenging and intimidating album experiences from the two musicians as a result of its incredibly loud open-up and intense sounds that is a far cry away from the emotive music of Basinski or the quiet minimalism of Chartier. It is a sudden opening that sets your heart racing before slowly transitioning into one of the most beautiful ambient melodies that slowly drifts past for an hour essentially. Now, you've got that intense opener that sort of sets the blood pumping before it sets you down into a sea of quiet minimalism, truly bringing together the essence of Basinski and Chartier's craft in such a wonderful collaborative way. It's certainly a challenging release, especially being around an hour in length as well, but it remains one of the most rewarding album experiences from both musicians, and one of my most listened to albums of this year. I am also super stoked to have scored a physical copy of this one, as alongside Jasmine Gaffond's Muzak for the encouragement of productivity, they were both released on cassette essentially, and I'm hoping these small string of physical releases is something we'll see from more of from line imprint, but we'll have to of course see in time. But a lovely thing to have in my collection, I have to say. Number 11, Quiet Pieces, Abel Mogot. So the latest album from Abel Mogot is one that captured my fascination this year, Quiet Places, which offers up Mogot's usual style of incredibly dense and emotional ambient drones. In this case, utilised from idle archived material from earlier projects, and some 78 RPM classical and opera recordings that belonged to Mogot's late uncle. Weaving together this experimental palette of sounds, we were offered such an incredibly dense experience of powerful low ends and emotional tones. And there's something so otherworldly about Mogot's music, as it seems to just transport you to these minimal places that feels both new and familiar at the same time. It's a very intense and emotional ambient drone experience that pushes down so heavily the more it all occurs, threatening to almost rip you apart as it intensifies with such phenomenal low ends. A powerful experience that is truly unforgettable and one of the best from Mogot I feel we've had. Number 10, Atrium, Wednesday Knudsen. So Atrium is one of those chance encounters with an album I experienced this year. I had actually never come across the music of Wednesday Knudsen prior to hearing Atrium, but after hearing this I think I'm becoming a bit of a fan. Atrium is Knudsen's 5th studio album and first double LP, offering up an incredible experience of minimalist ambient drones. It's like an entire orchestra at work, pulling the most beautiful somber notes from all of those instruments, and yet it's all Knudsen, performing alto saxophone, flute, piano, auto harp, guitar, bass and voice across the 11 different tracks. The music is these incredibly dense soundscapes that build up with these ambient foundations, expanded upon with these almost classical notions here and there, as it just fills up the atrium with these incredible timbre resonances. It's a truly impressive album experience that features one of my new favourite compositions I think I've ever heard, which is the second track of Conversation Open Fields, which is a piece that just completely moves my soul whenever I hear it. One of my absolute favourite things, and an amazing album from Knudsen. Truly fantastic, and definitely a reason why I should go check out more of their work. Number 9, Lotto. They are gutting a body of water. So this is another band that I discovered this year, well after the fact of their many albums already. Lotto is the latest album by They Are Gutting a Body of Water. So from the moment this one starts, you have a very dark, macabre atmosphere, punctuated so brilliantly by the screech of the guitar, which brings so much fuzz and distortion your way. It's a very moody album that explores shoegaze notions in very experimental ways that is very interesting and fascinating. I was kind of reminded of a bit of the likes of Slint on a couple of the tracks, whilst on others I was actually reminded a bit of the band Melodrome, which was one of my favourite bands growing up. But they are gutting a body of water. They seem to throw their experimentation into the lens of ear-splitting shoegaze for the most part, turning up the distortion so loudly at times and creating a very indulgent record as a result. It's a weird experience for the most part, but I really like the blending of harsh aggressive distortion with these almost pop sensibilities in the form of those shoegazing moments. A somewhat short album that gets you indulging in the dirge and sort of rocking out with the more dream pop moments. Truly phenomenal. Number 8. The Badfire, Mogwai. So we were graced with the latest studio album from Mogwai, The Badfire, the band's 11th studio album. The Badfire sees Mogwai offering up the classic Mogwai experience, which for me is never a bad thing. On this album though, there is such a vibe to so many of the songs. Like, you get some very dark dirges of intensely crushing post-rock, like the opener of God Runs You Down, which has a lot of very cool electronic moments in it as well, to some of the sort of fervent bangers statically reaching outwards like lion rumpus, and some beautifully emotional slow numbers like Pale Vegan Hip Pain, which has quickly shot up the list as one of my favourite Mogwai tracks, I have to say. Mogwai have just always been one of those bands that just taps into what I enjoy about music, just getting my blood running and my emotions racing as they play their wonderful tunes. And The Badfire is perhaps quintessential Mogwai music, but it's because they're a band that just do exactly what they do in such an amazing way. Nobody does it quite like Mogwai, and it's why it's always delightful to hear with what they come up next. And The Badfire, for me, is just another belter from the dudes. Definitely one of my most played albums of this year, and it's most likely in part to how wonderful this album is to drive to, I have to say. Wonderful to have on the car while you're just going down the motorway. Wonderful stuff. Number 7. The future is here and everything needs to be destroyed. The Armed. So I ended up discovering The Armed this year. I don't know why I haven't come across this any sooner, but it's just the way it is sometimes. But yes, the future is here and everything needs to be destroyed. This is one of my most played albums of this year. This is one of the most outrageously loud, bombastic and overwhelming album experience I think I've ever encountered. A true smorgasbord of just absolutely everything happening all at once. True hardcore music that is so fuzzy and distorted with so much pop sensibilities embedded into the framework of harsh loud music. I am just always blown away by how chaotic this thing sounds, and yet everything is so precise and so full of clarity. Like the amount of shit that has gone into these songs, layers and layers of instruments, sound and vocals, and yet it all sounds so perfectly clear. So expertly mixed by whoever had to wrangle this whole thing together. Truly phenomenal and something I have been playing constantly since I first discovered it. One of my absolute favourites of this year. Number 6. Birthing, Swans. So the latest album by Swans of Curse. This is an album that really surprised me in such a delightful way. Described as the last of the Big Sound albums, which also culminated in a final tour that was without a doubt one of the most amazing experiences I got to witness. Birthing. This essentially saw some consolidation of tracks that were developed during the tour for The Beggar. The album offers up 6 tracks of rather gargantuan experiences in some respects, creating an album that just flows from vibe to vibe, starting with such an ethereal opener of The Healers, navigating to the darkly intense I Am a Tower that ends with its sort of proto-David Bowie vibes, before finding room for some intense experimentalism on the second disc with The Merge. With how different the songs are at times, and yet so concisely presented here, it feels to me like a true culmination of the many different styles of Swan's music they have offered over the many years, all forming together to create this otherworldly and all-encompassing sound. I think this has to be one of the most I've enjoyed a Swans album in a long time, and it's not because I disliked any albums from the bands in this era, but it's more that this one just had such an intense and incredible impact upon me when I first heard it. Like, I seem to be ranking this one highly, as I've noticed I've been playing a lot of the songs a lot more than previous albums like On the Beggar or Deeply Meaning. Like, I enjoy the sounds, but I like this one better. Weirdly special, very Swans, and so delightfully experimental as well, and for me, one of their best in their amazing discography. Number 5. Requiem, All Men Unto Me. So, following on from the debut release of In Chemical Transit, Scotland's Ryland Glee has produced his second studio album, Requiem, an imagining of a Requiem Mass with a distinctly doom metal aesthetic. So, Ryland's control over his voice produces wonderful ethereal quality across all the different songs, lifting and soaring in this incredibly transcendental angelic way, before diving deep into the power and destruction of noise rock and doom. What is truly spectacular is how Glee examines such a powerful and emotional story of queer identity, examined under a lens of this religious setting, begging for understanding and forgiveness. An incredible sense of existentialism under the lens of loud avant-garde metal music, which is very similar to the kind of things we heard on Hostile Architecture by Ashenspire, I have to say. Just a truly phenomenal record here though, which is without a doubt one of the best things I have heard all year, and one you definitely shouldn't miss if it didn't pop up in your radar at all. Number 4. Your Whistle Tells of Landscape, Alexandra Spence. So I'll admit, I was very excited when I noticed a new album from Alexandra Spence that came out this year. Your Whistle Tells of Landscape, another incredibly enigmatic and strange album experience, of minimalist experimental electroacoustic music that traverses across the world through the use of Spence's field recordings and a plethora of peculiar and unusual instruments, including a custom lyre, amplified objects and handmade electronics. So across the entire album, you just have this gorgeous palette of instruments and sounds that are woven together so precisely, which actually leans delightfully into peculiarities of sound and instruments themselves, be it the pull on a violin, scraping the very string itself across the bow with such wonderful discordance, or the crackling of some interference, just rattling away in your ears, or even Spence's own voice, plainly stating how she'd like to know the frequency of a leaf. It just all contributes to this wonderfully strange and rather confusing listening experience that digs deep into the recesses of your own head as they occur. Listening to this whole thing feels like traversing through imagined landscapes, strange liminal spaces that exist in the strangest corners of this world. It's a difficult album to summarise properly, but I have delighted in how the whole thing sounds and the strange journey it takes me on with each and every listen every time I've heard it. Number 3. Music for the Encouragement of Unproductivity, Jasmine Gaffond. So easily my favourite album to come from Line Imprint this year. Music for the Encouragement of Unproductivity by Jasmine Gaffond. So this 3-track album is a peculiar experience of electroacoustic music, utilising horns, clarinet and synth-like modulations, creating these incredibly slow-moving drones that breathe out like the very air itself. The whole album sounds truly beautiful and such an effortless drift into the cosmic unknown, but the story behind its conception is truly spectacular as well. Much of the album was created to address concepts of seamless, efficient productivity inherent to capitalist cultures, So the conceptual art piece, was initially installed for Dystopia Sound Art Biennial in 2024 at the Amazon Packaging Centre, or an Amazon Packaging Station. So, in a world where it offers such easy routes to capitalism, unaware of the dystopic exploitation of labour and the impact of overproduction on stuff we don't even need for the most part, Muzak, for the encumbrance of unproductivity, offers a wonderful reflective space for us all to just slow down and consider the benefits of personally, globally, and environmentally doing the same as well. It's a strange concept that is truly admirable, and I just adore how Gaffond has created this gentle, down-tempo drone experience for us to sit and contemplate very real issues here. It's definitely not one to be missed, and as mentioned earlier, I'm very glad to have a physical copy of this one, because when it was announced that Boomcat would be doing a limited run of this on cassette, I had to leap at the opportunity and grab a copy of what was essentially the first physical release and line imprint in just shy of a decade. Truly wonderful album to have a copy of, and now goes nice alongside with Aurora Terminalis because they released that on cassette as well. With this one, this is apparently also released on vinyl, so if you prefer vinyl in your physical collection, then grab this one. What a thing to have in your collection. Truly cool stuff. Number 2. The Spiritual Sound, Agriculture. So my goodness, what an incredible album we have here. Like, I'll be honest, I was very excited to hear the latest Agriculture album when it was first announced. The band's debut self-titled album is one of those albums that's really grown on me more and more over the past few years since it was released. Hence why I was excited to hear this one, as their music is just astounding to me. It probably helped that the single releases of Bodhidharma and The Weight were just truly brilliant, and just one of the best songs I heard from them in a while. In regards to the spiritual sound though, it's funny because my first instance of actually hearing a bunch of these songs was actually during their gig in London back in August or whenever it was, which was without doubt one of the best gigs I saw this year, I have to say. So the spiritual sound, it sees the quartet extending their black metal notions with a fair amount of experimentation here, creating such a phenomenal record that just transcends once again as it all occurs. Like, you still have that black metal styling, though the band used so much space to really develop the songs, letting it all build so brilliantly across the entire runtime, offsetting the darker faced fast-paced motions with some wonderful moments of beauty and serenity. Like, I'm just in awe of when it comes to Agriculture. Like, the four musicians have just tapped into something so truly special, blending together such heavy, aggressive styles of music with this transcendental, spiritual vibe in the form of religious moments of ecstasy. Truly wonderful stuff, and one of the best of this year. Number 1. Motherfucker, I Am Both Amen and Hallelujah, Shirley. So, my number 1 album of the year. I'm quite surprised this one ended up being the top of the list, but I can't fault how this one makes me feel. Perhaps one of the most intimidating and formidable experiences ever committed to tape. The debut album from Shearling, which is the latest project from Alexander Kent following the dissolution of Sprain. The elaborately titled Motherfucker, I Am Both Amen and Hallelujah. So this gargantuan experience of noise music, consolidating studio recordings, live recordings, and even phone demos, it creates this single composition that can take you on such an intense journey of sonic experiences, all offset by the constant Dadaist babbling from Alexander Kent. This album just bludgeons you with just constantly a true sonic collage of thousands of different sounds and instruments strung together into this incoherent nonsense, and I think it is brilliant for it. Like, listening to this, I'm kind of given the vibe of what feels like a perfect middle ground between the likes of Shoo Shoo and Swans, except way more of a smorgasbord of pure nonsensical ranting and raving. But there's a lot more going on here as well, like truly fantastic moments of music at times, some dense distorted dirges, some doomy moments, others more frenetic and manic, others a bit more slower, others much more experimental, like, just creating those odd sound collages that you get in the likes of Shushu's music, for example. But it creates this constantly shifting experience that is without doubt one of the most demanding album experiences I think I've ever come across, and something that just stuns me whenever I hear it. It's the kind of thing that will completely overwhelm you across its hour-length runtime, creating an experience that reveals a multitude of details that you never notice the first time with each and every listen, because I think it's simply impossible to take it all in at once. It's truly spectacular and such an impossible album to even try to consolidate in a single paragraph. Like, I just know I'm both amazed and terrified by this album, but it's without a doubt one of the best things I heard this year. Like, I just can't get over how weird, absurd and brilliant this whole thing, hence why this is my album of the year. An absurd, indulgent and yet a wonderful expression of a completely untethered creativity in music. Not for the faint of heart, but spectacular and truly a unique album experience. And so with that, the 50 best albums of 2025, or the best albums of 2025. What an eclectic list this is, but as always, this is just music that communicated something to me over the years, and stuff that I just got the most out of when I heard it. Like, I'm quite surprised how my taste seemed to develop to incorporate a lot more black metal music this year, especially in consideration to previous years, perhaps. But I think it's actually been an incredible year for the genre, what with Agriculture, Death Haven, and then a plethora of amazing bands that have released physical copies on Fiat Productions as well. But yeah, weird year for sure, I have to say, but this has been one of my favourite for the quality of albums we've actually had from this year. Like, I actually feel like there's actually been no clear winner of best album of this year for me. Like, I did put Shearling in the top spot because it was the most unique and amazing, but I feel like everyone has released some of the most incredible albums this year, making this a very difficult list to put together, but we got there in the end. As well as all these amazing bands though, it amazes me how many of you watching have also created some of your own amazing music as well this year. Like, a couple have made it to the list, some others I have heard and listened to, and honourable mentions to them, I guess. Not that I'm doing that this year, of course, but it's very cool how many of you are creating such amazing music, so I'm very looking forward to seeing what's coming in the next year or so. So, yeah, to all of you who have made it this far, I would like to thank you for watching today's episode. If you do have any favourite albums of your own that didn't make this list, or did make this list, let us know in the comments what communicated itself to you. In the new year, we'll be continuing our dive into the wonderful world of music, all the many different things it has to offer, of course. Returning to the randomizer as well, which is spitting out some really weird albums now, which does make sense because you guys have constantly been suggesting weird stuff, which because it's a weird show, isn't it? I'm looking forward to discussing them though, but more of those in the new year. To all of you who have supported the show in your own ways, I would like to thank you, and I hope you've all had a wonderful 2025 here to 2026, right? With that, I wish you all the best, take care, and bye bye for now. Bye bye.